Hello, everybody, and welcome to Table Talk. For the month of May, we're exploring food allergies. My name is Joni Rampolla, one of the registered licensed dietitians with Giant and Martin's. And today I have two panelists, and actually sitting in the background, you may see her too, is a third one that works with them, Emily, but she's not coming on screen. But today we have Kelly and Tiffany that are joining us, and I am going to let them each take a moment to introduce themselves. Kelly, I'll start with you.
Sure, I can get started. My name is Kelly Cleary. I'm a pediatrician. My training was in pediatrics and my fellowship in emergency medicine. I also have a really strong interest in pediatric mental health. I am now serving as the medical director at FAIR, Food Allergy Research and Education, and I'm a food allergy mom, so I've got four kids, and one of them has multiple anaphylactic food allergies. So happy to talk about food allergies today, and thank you for having us on for Food Allergy Awareness Month.
Absolutely. And
And I'm Tiffany Leon, and like Joni, I'm also a registered dietitian. I came to FAIR because I was on a college university campus helping students manage their food allergies and accommodations while staying with us. And I used so many of FAIR's resources that when I saw an opening, I made the jump. So I'm happy to be here to raise awareness of food allergies.
excellent. And what is your role in relation to food allergies?
At FAIR, I manage all of the training for professional staff, so other dietitians like myself, nurse practitioners, PAs, other healthcare professionals, as well as those in food service. And it does expand from college universities all the way down to K through 12 and other areas in hospitality, restaurants, catering, and in this case, like retail, food service. Yeah.
Love it. So, what does the acronym FAIR, F-A-R-E, actually stand for, and what does FAIR do?
So FAIR stands for Food Allergy Research and Education, and we are a large national nonprofit dedicated to food allergies. So really our vision at some point is to help cure and get a cure for food allergies. But in the meantime, our mission is to work diligently to help with research. So we fund a lot of research across the country through donations that we get. We do a lot of advocacy work to try to have the voice of the food allergy community be heard. And as Tiffany mentioned, we do a ton of education. So that's kind of the heart of who we are. But really, we are here to serve the food allergy community.
Excellent. We have our first customer question. Why do so many children have peanut allergies?
You know,
Tiffany, and then, yeah, go
if
ahead, you go.
we if we I wish we had a strong concrete answer for that. There have been a lot of things studied from vitamin D levels to omega-3s, during the prenatal period, postnatal period, childhood. They've studied this hygiene hypothesis, like maybe we're too clean now, and so when our body interacts with food allergens, it thinks it's a threat. It mistakes this harmless protein as a threat. Um, there was a time back in the early 90s when the guidance from the Academy of Pediatrics was to delay introductions of allergens as a strategy to prevent the development of food allergies. And so potentially delaying eating some of these foods caused a rise in food allergies. That guidance has now changed. And I know we're not really getting into prevention today, but we have a lot of resources on prevention of food allergies. So like Kelly said, our job is to make our jobs obsolete. And so if we knew the answer to that, we would be one step closer to a cure.
So, can you just help us understand the difference between a food allergy and a food intolerance?
Sure, I can
So
go there.
you go ahead, Kelly. You go ahead.
I figured we could ping pong.
Yeah, go
So
ahead.
a food allergy is immune related. So when we look at the immune system, it's when our body perceives a food that everyone else's body thinks is safe as harmful, and our body tries to invade it and mount this huge immune response. So that's a food allergy and an allergic reaction that would ensue from there. Again, it's immune mediated and it can be life threatening. A food intolerance, on the other hand, is generally involving the GI system, the gastrointestinal system. So stomach may cause nausea, vomiting, discomfort, bloating, but not life-threatening. So when we look at those two, that's really the big distinction. A lot of us, you can have a lactose intolerance, which will cause discomfort and, often nausea and all of that. And it's your body's inability to digest that lactose, but it is not a milk allergy, which would be something that could potentially be life-threatening and is mediated by the immune system.
Great, thank you. A customer says her husband likes strawberries and watermelon, but sometimes during the spring he gets us a reaction from those fruits, but not any other time of the year. Have you ever heard of such a thing?
Do you want me
Yes,
to?
and yeah, I would just say that, and we're not really getting into environmental allergies now, but I'm in Maryland. I know you guys all like to share where you're from, so in the chat, and I know it's disabled today, but I'm in Maryland, and Maryland, the pollen count is so high right now. Environmental things are swirling, and when there is a condition called pollen allergen syndrome or oral allergy syndrome. And so there is this interaction between things in the environment, there's pollens in the environment and items being on the skin. So when you're eating things like an apple or a strawberry that you wouldn't normally be peeling, it may be a reaction to the things that are on the skin versus the actual proteins in that food. I don't know if Kelly wants to add anything to that.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. That oral like allergen syndrome is really it can be a reaction that people have typically in the mouth where they feel itchy. And it's usually to raw fruits and vegetables. And it's almost that your body is perceiving that as pollen and acting in that way. But those are typically mild reactions. And so yes, we've seen what your attendee is experiencing, and it's certainly well documented as well.
Yeah, and I would also say that even though you're not eating the skin of the watermelon, you think about how you access the skin and slicing through with that knife, it introduces things that are on the outside, into the middle of that watermelon. And sometimes individuals can tolerate the fruit when it is frozen or if it's cooked, because it does break down some of those environmental, those pollen, those triggers on the outside, and makes it easier for the body to handle.
Thank you for that. A customer is asking, can you outgrow allergies such as peanut allergy?
So the answer is that you can outgrow some food allergies. Peanut and tree nut are typically ones that stay with you lifelong. But what we're finding nowadays, as Tiffany mentioned before, where food allergies, the incidence of food allergies is on the rise, and we're actually even seeing an increase in the amount of adult onset food allergies. So we're seeing things kind of sway each and every way. But typically, when we look at outgrowing food allergies, it is more common to outgrow an allergy to milk or egg than it is to outgrow a peanut or tree nut allergy.
So I have an interesting question here from a customer, and I am going to paraphrase it, but um, they want to know if there is such a thing as a food dye allergy, as someone in their family was told they were allergic to red 40. Can you explain?
So food dyes right now are a hot topic, right? Because we just got, from the government that we're going to be eliminating them. The data on food allergy, on food dyes, is actually inconsistent. So I saw that the customer had mentioned something about hyperactivity. Those studies are really inconsistent. There have been some studies that have shown that there's a relation, some studies that have shown that there aren't. But the thing that I do want to point out, so while that link, the relationship between something like food dye and ADHD, is not a concrete link, what can happen is that a person can be allergic to anything. So an allergy to a food dye can happen. So someone can be allergic to a food dye where they might get an allergic reaction from ingesting that food. But the other data on looking at the neurological side effects are just, they're not consistent. There are people out there who will say there is a link, and there are others who will say that it's kind of not really been as proven. Nevertheless, like, we are one of the few countries who uses them. So I think that that's where that decision came from.
Excellent. If a child with severe milk allergies has reached the age of 20 and still has allergies, is there any chance of them outgrowing it?
I would say probably not. In the research on outgrowing allergies, specifically milk, I believe the age hovers around 12, if they are going to be likely to outgrow it. We are seeing adult onset of food allergies now. So maybe there is a time in adulthood when the immune system does kind of reset and adjust. But I would say if the individual, if the customer or their family member does have a milk allergy at age 20, it's probably likely that they will have it lifelong.
How do people with food allergies keep themselves safe?
Start there because that's my bread and butter and my life, having a child with food allergies. And it's actually just a lifestyle of vigilance in some way. It is making sure that everything that that person ingests is safe for them and does not contain that specific allergen. So I will share that my son is allergic to peanuts, eggs, and shellfish. So eggs for us is a tricky one, right? Because eggs can show up on anything, but that's where really reading labels becomes super important. And I'm gonna toss it over to Tiffany in a second because I feel like she has her finger on the pulse of reading those labels, but really just from the personal side of things, it's a lifestyle of vigilance, and it's really trying to avoid the food that you're allergic to, and that really takes reading labels very, very carefully and knowing what you ingest. But I'm going to toss it to Tiffany to give some tips on reading those labels.
Yeah, and I would say that, the treatment for food allergies is avoidance, as Kelly said. And so our community, those that are uh, allergic to certain foods, plan ahead to try and prevent a reaction. And that the critical piece of that is knowing what's in the food that they're ingesting. So whether they're going to the grocery store, going to Giant, going to Martin's and reading food labels, or going out to a restaurant or going to grandma's house, they need to know what's in these foods. And so getting the key pieces of information from the manufacturer of these items: in an apple, it's going to be an apple. In a banana, it's going to be a banana. You don't see the traditional nutrition facts label on those whole fruits and vegetables. But if you pick up a bottle of salad dressing, or you pick up a package of pasta, there will have all the nutrition information. It tells you how much protein, it tells you how many carbohydrates, and then it will have an ingredient statement. And because of the FASTER Act of 2021 and FALCPA, Food Allergen Labeling and Consumer Protection Act of 2004, the manufacturer must list the 9 common allergens in plain language. So that may be written in the ingredient list. So on the bag of noodles, it may say ingredients: wheat, comma, eggs, comma, some preservatives. It will say in plain language in the ingredient list, or the manufacturer can pull these out in a contained statement at the bottom. So if you're thinking about a salad dressing, it may say on all the ingredients, and then on the bottom it may say contains milk and eggs and anchovy, it may say fish. If it is part of those food groups, like tree nuts, fish, shellfish, it must say the type that is in there. It must say anchovy or it must say cashew, because individuals in the community can be allergic to only one and not everything in that group. Just because you're allergic to cashew doesn't mean that you are allergic to all tree nuts. And so the manufacturer must disclose which type of fish, which type of shellfish, and we're talking about crustacean shellfish here, and which type of finfish are in those packaged items. So hopefully that answers the labeling question. The parts of the label that get really confusing is the precautionary allergen labeling statements. That's where it lists, or that's where you may see words that say may contains, or may contain traces of, or made in a facility with. Those are voluntary. They're not regulated by those laws that I mentioned before. And it can be very confusing for the customer. But typically a manufacturer is going to put that on there if they're using shared lines or it's a really small space between the two packaging processing lines. And they've done all that they can, but just in case they couldn't clean it quite right or there was still allergen present, they will put that on the label. And there is research to show that packaged items that have precautionary allergen labeling may contain that allergen. So those in our community, based on a conversation with their physician, may also be avoiding things that have precautionary allergen statements.
Thank you for that. A customer has a question. Can any food cause an allergy or just specific foods? And at what age can you diagnose a toddler?
So yes, any food can cause a food allergy, and that's something that I think is a little bit sometimes of a myth within food allergies because people know of the ones that are most common. So people know and have heard of milk or tree nut, peanut or tree nut. But then when you get down to some that are less common, people sometimes question, can those be as severe? And the answer is yes. So any food can cause a food allergy. So that was the first part. And the second part about diagnosis is, we usually say diagnosis in food allergy is still a little bit tricky. And when we say tricky, I mean that the process for it is a little bit inelegant. So there's a lot of different arms to actually diagnose a food allergy, but really the only people who should be going to see if they have a food allergy are people who have experienced symptoms with a specific food. So it's not something that you want to go to just to see, right? So even though I've got 4 kids and one of them has really bad food allergies, I have not tested my other kids for food allergies because we often see that there are false positives that come from testing for food allergies. So it really depends on that clinical, like picture that has happened when a person has reacted to a food. So you could be diagnosed, even in infancy with a food allergy, but it really should accompany that clinical diagnosis of having reacted to a certain food.
That was a great explanation. Thank you. I have a customer that's saying they used to have a peanut allergy slash sensitivity from childhood through their late 30s. It's been more than 10 years since they've had a reaction to peanuts. Is there still a chance that they can go back to having a reaction in the future?
Yes, unfortunately. And it's not that the likelihood at this point, there have not been papers that have shown is there a higher likelihood because they had a prior allergy, but what we're seeing is that the immune system is changing, and sometimes it's changing in response to the environment that we have. So we are seeing that increase in food allergy. We're seeing an increase in adult onset. So there's no guarantee that because that food allergy went away, that that person is going to be fine for the rest of their lives. There could be a chance that that allergy reemerges or that a new allergy develops.
And these are all really important questions to have with your physician. I know Kelly said that we're not doing like large panel tests to hunt for a food allergy, not testing people that aren't having reactions. But if you have had a history of a reaction, then hopefully you're working with a general practitioner or an allergist, and you can work together to determine if a test would be appropriate, or guidance on what you should avoid, what caution you should be taking when you're looking for foods. Every individual is going to be different with the history, and the guidance that the physician may give.
I love this question. I feel like I'm so glad you brought this up from a customer. How is an EpiPen administered, and how do I know when to do it?
I'll let the medical
So,
director take this one.
well, okay, so when we look at reactions, and this is where it becomes important because a food allergy reaction that is severe is known as anaphylaxis, right? So a reaction called anaphylaxis is a severe life-threatening food allergy. And the only way to stop that allergy is through using epinephrine. So we always say if you suspect anaphylaxis, it's epi first and epi fast. So what would make you suspect anaphylaxis? So we kind of like to classify symptoms in terms of mild and moderate. If someone has one hive, that's a mild symptom. They don't need to have epinephrine. It's likely not going to progress to anaphylaxis. But if someone has multiple mild symptoms, so hives all over and vomiting, or hives all over and a bit of a wheeze, those two systems, we say we would be concerned for anaphylaxis and would meet the criteria for anaphylaxis. Any of the severe symptoms, we say, are a marker for anaphylaxis. So if someone is having difficulty breathing, if someone is feeling faint, if someone has lots of vomiting, so recurrent vomiting and is vomiting 5 and 6 times. It used to be, I remember even before I was in med school, when someone would have a food allergy and you would hear they're vomiting, someone would be like, oh, that's a good thing because they're getting the food out of their system. No, profuse vomiting and vomiting repetitively in the face of allergen ingestion is anaphylaxis. So if you suspect that there's a severe reaction, anaphylaxis, epi first, epi fast. Now, just because this is where I live and breathe, I do happen to have trainers. So I come prepared. So this is one type of epinephrine. This is the EpiPen device. This one is actually not a trainer. It's a real one. So I'm not going to inject myself. But if you see a device like this, the best way to do this is blue to the sky, orange to the thigh, right? So blue to the sky, orange to the thigh. And there is a needle that comes out of there. You could do this right through the clothing. You don't have to take the clothing off, but it's right on the lateral thigh. So this is one type. You may see a type that looks like this. This one talks to you. So I will. This trainer contains no needle or drug. It's for training purposes only. Do not use this trainer during an allergic emergency. If you are ready to use, pull red safety guard down off of this trainer. Place left outer thigh. Pretend my thigh. You hear a click hiss sound. 2, 1. So pretend my arm was my thigh, but again, you would go on the side of your thigh. And then so these are two types, and there are other types that are auto injectors as well. This is a new one that recently got FDA approved, and this one is called Neffy. You may recognize this. This is the same mechanism and the same device as Narcan. This one is needleless. So you would insert it in the nose, hold it like this, and then just the plunger into the nose. So these are a bunch of different types. There are a couple of more types on the market, but the most important thing to remember is if you suspect anaphylaxis, it's epi first, epi fast. Doesn't matter which epi you have. You give whichever one you have. They will all work in the same way. And Tiffany, what did I forget? Because I'm sure in that was a long description.
I would just say that, we only have 30 minutes here, and that was like a long but short description. We have like a 25-minute training that we can share out links to afterwards. It's free. If you're in the food allergy community, you may have already taken this, but feel free to share this with grandparents and babysitters and bus drivers and coaches, anyone that could be potentially around someone that's having an anaphylactic reaction. So we're updating it, as Kelly said, to add the newest needle-free option, so which should be available shortly. But the one that lives on our site right now does have all these different ones, EpiPen, AuviQ, so you can see the difference and goes through the signs and symptoms on how to recognize and respond to a reaction, because delays in administering it can be fatal. So we want to make sure that we're getting them the medication that they need right away.
Can you just share some more of the resources that you have? I know we're touching on that, and I see we only have like 5 minutes, so I want to make sure we get that in. And any links you send me, I will send out with the follow-up email as well. So there will be more information coming to everybody if we don't get to your question.
Yeah, and we're, as I said, we can share things out afterwards, links to some of our resources. We have a lot of trainings, recorded webinars. We do monthly webinars on various topics. So depending on where you are in relation and your relationship to food allergy, others may resonate more than others, but next week is Food Allergy Awareness Week, and we're so excited to raise awareness of food allergies in the workplace. So we're going to be sharing out different resources on how to avoid cross contact, how to ask the right questions, how to recognize and respond to an allergic reaction, how to incorporate and include your coworkers, your friends, your family in gatherings, because we want to keep everyone safe. And this gets back to the planning and preventing piece, but also how to react in case of an allergic reaction. And we can send out some of those details too.
Does FAIR do any advocacy around best practices in food manufacturing?
Yes. Tiffany is involved in that, so I'll let her go.
Yeah, we do advocacy on a variety of different levels, whether it's local or state or even at the federal level. We played a big role in the passage of the FASTER Act of 2021 and in getting sesame added to those food labels. I say we, but really my colleagues on the advocacy team, they really showed up to highlight the importance of ingredient transparency, especially as it relates to sesame. But most recently, Kelly was involved in some discussions around the precautionary allergen labeling, um, and these voluntary uh, labeling that can be so confusing. So yeah, we do all kinds of advocacy, but we also encourage our food allergy community to advocate for themselves in their local community, to raise awareness in their schools, in their restaurants. So we have resources on how to do that, how to be a pal, how to help the little ones in the classroom setting, teaching them, teaching their friends what a food allergy is. So we teach self-advocacy as well as formal advocacy in the local and federal level.
And I don't know if there's a quick answer to this, but why are we putting an EpiPen in the thigh? Why the thigh?
Well, it's a good question. It's the muscle that you're putting it into. It's just that like it's a good vascular muscle, so it's a good muscle to distribute that. Someone else asked, and I think this is a super important question, can you give a second one? And that's such a wonderful question because the answer is yes. If you see that someone got a little bit better and then is kind of showing symptoms again, you can give another epinephrine. So super important. So the thigh is for the auto injectors, and obviously the intranasal is nose.
How common are allergies now?
Well, in the US, we're estimating that about 33 million have food allergies. And we say we estimate because some people can have a reaction and know that they're having a food allergy reaction, and it may be self-diagnosed. We're doing a landscape study now to kind of get a better idea, because we think that number is actually higher than 33 million. And I think we pulled the stats across the globe, and it was somewhere around 220 million people that do have food allergies.
Wow. Can you just name the nine main food allergies?
So it's peanut, tree nut, milk, egg, wheat, soy, finfish, shellfish, and sesame. That was a
Yes.
test. Someone was testing me.
But you can be
Sesame is
allergic
the
to
new
any
one.
food.
Yep. So
And
one more.
Joni, I saw another one that asked about where in the thigh. So I'm going to just show you. It's the lateral thigh. So you would put this in the lateral thigh. Either of these would be the side of the thigh.
Excellent. Well, this has been so wonderful and so informative that we so appreciate all your time and effort sharing some knowledge about food allergies because it's so important. Keep us safe, right? Any last closing comments as we are just at 12:30?
We'll just say I saw another one. Should 911 be called? Yes. If you're giving epinephrine, call 911 and seek medical help or call for that person. But I just want to thank you all for learning more about food allergies, especially in Food Allergy Awareness Month. This is near and dear to both mine and Tiffany's hearts. So thank you for taking the time.
And if you could send me what you want me to send out, I will send it out to our attendees today. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you as well for putting all your questions in Q&A for everybody in the audience. Have a great rest of your day, everybody. Bye. Thank you. Bye.